guy who likes the rules. I like the House because there are rules. In the Senate, there's a book of rules, and then they ignore all of those. In the Senate, the idea is bills should be considered on their regular. They don't have a calendars committee per se. They've got some mechanisms for scheduling, but they envision that they'll deal with bills in the order that they're reported out of the standing committees. That's supposed to be the standing normal rule. And then what they do every session is the first bill reported out is what's called the Rosebush bill or the Parks Beautification bill or something that doesn't matter, right? That bill comes out, and then all session long, technically speaking, they're debating that bill. We're talking about rose bushes for 4 months. The way it works is that there's a mechanism in the rules that says if you can get 2/3 of the members to vote to take up a bill, you take that bill then up out of order. So, the first bill is the Rosebush bill, and the second bill is, let's say it was the budget, and the third bill is open carry, and the fourth bill is whatever. There's a whole line of bills. And you go out there and you say, well, I have 2/3 of the members to support pulling Bill 55 out of order, and we're going to take it up today. Now, they have a mechanism in place to what's called an intent calendar, giving notice to other members of your intent to, move for that vote, to take something up out of that list and move it up to the front. And that's the mechanism for how the Senate is considering bills. So what it has effectively meant is that all of that normal rule is kind of out the window, and every day you have to have a 2/3 majority to pull a bill up. Well, this kind of made sense when we were a one-party state. Conservative, it was all Democrats. It wasn't partisan fighting. It was factional. It was rural versus urban, conservative Democrats versus liberal Democrats. It wasn't the worst thing. And I think it was created in the doesn't go back to the 19th century. I think it was early 20th century that they started doing it by this process. But what it has meant in recent years, as the state has divided on partisan lines, is that the Democrats have had absolute control over what comes to the floor and what doesn't. And so they've had this absolute veto. They carved out voter ID out of the rule a couple sessions ago, and that allowed that to pass. They basically said, well, it takes 2/3 to move a bill unless it deals with voter ID, and then it just takes a majority because they do the rules at the beginning of the session.
Since it only takes a majority vote to postpone the bill, why don't they just move to postpone the blocker bill?
Well, I mean. Remember, there are rules that deal with the normal process, and no one knows what they are, and they don't use them. So it is just, there are ways. So like, I think it was either last session or 2 sessions ago, there's this idea of House and Senate bill days. On Wednesdays and Thursdays, they're supposed to be dealing with House bills in the Senate, and supposed to be dealing with Senate bills in the House. And so they kind of dug up this little-known rule to say, all right, well, the House passed the budget. No, that was this session. The House passed the budget, and so we're on the budget first thing today. That's the first thing that came over from the House, and so that's what we're going to work on. There are ways that have been worked around this 2/3 rule, but generally speaking, that's what's been done. The movement now, and Dan Patrick campaigned on this in the primary. I think there's been a little backpedaling from some conservatives, so if you feel strongly about this, I'd suggest reaching out to your member and any member of the Senate to say, there's a movement now to say, well, 2/3, 66%, which gives the Democrats control, even with Connie Burton's win, which was great. You need 21 votes, not 20, 20 Republicans. Would still give the Democrats ultimate control over what comes to the floor and what doesn't. And so 66% being insanely high, we ought to go to the same number that is used in the Senate in Washington, in the Senate in most places, 60%, and that would put it down to 19. I'm not 100% sure whether that's going to happen or not. But that is the big change that's being contemplated. So we're going to talk a little bit about Speaker, and we're going to talk a little bit about House leadership and that side, but the big fight on the Senate side that's going into the first few days of session is what do we do with this mechanism, and do we allow the Democrats to continue to have control over what comes to the floor of the Texas Senate? Now, I'll tell you, it's a little bit of the Brer Rabbit thing. We've got a pretty good Senate majority block of conservatives, solid conservatives. So it's a little bit of a don't throw me in that briar patch kind of thing. If it only takes 11 members to kill a bill permanently in the Senate, that's some pretty good power for conservatives as well. So there is a consolation prize, but I tend to come down and say, enough is enough on Democrat obstructionism and the bills we're trying to do. Anyway, I'll let Joanne get up there.